Those beautiful days of the golden sands of Puttaparthi, of Prasanthi Nilayam, those beautiful Chitravati sands which used to adorn the Darshan Hall in the 1980s. I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I considered myself to be an extremely disciplined boy. The reason being that back in my Samiti in Bahrain, children were not allowed to sit for bhajans. The weekly bhajans, children were not allowed to sit because they would be, crying and making a lot of noise. But one child alone was allowed to sit in bhajans, and that was me, because I never made sound. I didn't make any noise. I was a very disciplined child, and people used to come and pat me on the back. And even at that age of about 5 or 6, I had that ego that I was a very disciplined child. And so here I was for our yearly darshan of Bhagwan. And all of us, we want that one single thing. What do we want in Prasanthi Nilayam? The first time when we come to Prasanthi Nilayam, what do we want? No, not Swami's Padnamaskar or Swami's. The first thing we want is token number 1. Isn't it? That is the most coveted thing. Because that is what is going to give us the passport or the visa to then get whatever we would get. So here was me and my father, both of us crying and praying every day for the token number 1. But for about 8 days, every day we used to get only double-digit tokens. 10, 12, 19, 21. Those were the fantastic numbers that we were getting. And on the 8th day in the morning, lo and behold, my father put his hand into the pouch through which we used to pick out, and there came token number 1. Wow! Heart leapt up in joy, ran in and picked up a vantage position. A vantage position in Prasanthi Nilayam is where Swami just cannot miss you. Swami has to come over there. That's what we think. So we took up one such vantage position and sat over there. I was sitting in the first row, and then the trouble started, or so I thought. One of our dear uncles wearing the blue scarf, who is in charge of our spiritual progress, the Sevadil, even I have been a Sevadil, he comes up to me and says, Sairam, not here, Sairam. Sairam is such a beautiful word, In fact, we don't need language at all. The Sairam would have been one word which conveys all the emotions known to mankind. Right from Sairam to Sairam. Sairam, you can convey every emotion that you want through this one word called Sairam. So even as he gave me one of those Turner Sairams, I looked back and said, Sairam. I gave him one of those, my better Sairams. And of course, that was not going to melt his heart. He simply looked at me and said, Sairam, children were not allowed to sit in the first row. Because what used to happen is, children used to just get up and walk up to Bhagwan as he's giving darshan, which is not a very nice thing to do. And so I was sternly asked to move to the second row. And I started unnecessarily arguing with that uncle. I said, no, uncle, I am not going to walk. I am not going to do anything. I'll simply sit over here and wait for Bhagwan to come and, take his Padnamaskar. Obviously, that uncle was not understanding any other language other than the language of heart at that moment. And so he said, Sairam, whose son is this? Whose child is this? And so I looked up at my father, thinking that, my father will rescue me. And my father suddenly disowned me at that moment. Who is this child? I don't know who this is. Obviously, because his first place was going to go. And I was shocked. I said, what is this, Dad? You've just given me up like that. Obviously, for token number 1, we are ready to give up anything. And so I was unceremoniously taken from that place and deposited in the farthest arch possible in the Prasanthi Nilayam Mandir. I was deposited over there along with all the other children. And this was a major, major shock to me. I couldn't digest it. How could I, the most disciplined child, be treated this way? And so I started bowling, and it didn't stop over there. I started shouting. I started saying, this is not real Swami. Because this Swami is not listening to me. This is not real Swami. And then I went on to say, these are not real Sevadals also. I don't know what is the meaning of that even to this day, but I simply started shouting, "This is not real Swami and this is not real Sevadals." And guess what happened? My father and me were ceremoniously thrown out of the darshan grounds. And soon we held the first line, but not inside the darshan hall, outside the darshan hall. Obviously, my father also and me, both of us were thrown out of the darshan hall for all my tantrums. And we had the beautiful darshan of Bhagwan from outside the darshan hall. And you know, when Bhagwan walks, Bhagwan does not walk. Swami glides. You know, for us, when we walk, we have this movement. But if you see Bhagwan, when he walks, he's almost like on rollerblades. You know, he's just flowing through. And because the long robes of Bhagwan, if you notice, you know, he'll cover his feet. You cannot even see his feet. So you don't know what is happening below, actually. He just starts gliding over. And those beautiful footprints which are left on the sands, we used to pick up that and we used to take it back home, you know, for, you know, these are the footprints. And oftentimes it used to so happen that Swami would call some devotees for interview, and suddenly at the end of darshan, we wouldn't know which is Swami's footprint and which is the devotee's footprint. But we would simply collect some footprint and come back home thinking those were Swami's footprints. You know, in fact, that is the ultimate reality that Swami wants us to recognize. There is no difference between I and you. Anyway, so we had Swami's darshan. And it used to so happen that in those days, Swami used to come out at about 7:15 and take devotees for interview. And then he will invariably come for a second round of darshan. So the considerate first-timers will give way to the devotees. They will all go for breakfast. And other set of devotees will come and sit in the front, wait, probably expect whether Swami will come or not. So my father said that let us forego breakfast today. Let us go and sit as front as we can after the darshan gets over, and we will pray. And I was simply tearing. I couldn't control my tears because how could my Swami do this to me? This is what I wanted. I had been praying for this all along. And how could this happen to me? And so after the darshan got over, we went and we took our places. I was sitting in the second row and just kept crying. And I was broadcasting the innermost prayers of my heart. Swami, how could you do this to me? Swami, how could you do this to me? It was about 7:45 in the morning, and the interview room door opened, and Swami came out and simply looked in my direction. And from there, he walked absolutely straight to me. Ramrod straight. He walks up to me and I am getting goosebumps all over myself because my Swami was walking towards me, and by then, I had somehow found myself in the first row. Swami walks up straight to me and says, "Hey, why are you shouting?" I was shouting at about 6:15 in the morning. Swami had heard my shouts at about 7:45 in the morning. 1.5 hour delay, but no problem. My Lord had listened to my prayers. He walked up to me and said, "Why are you shouting?" I was absolutely dumbstruck because my Swami was standing right in front of me and then said, "Hey, take Pad Namaskar." And simply walked away, completing the darshan. That day, dear brothers and sisters, I realized that my Swami listens to my prayers and responds to my prayers. He walked into my life. Once in Trai, Swami was telling all the boys, "Boys, you have only two options. Either you allow me to enter into your life, or I will break open your heart and enter into your life. But enter I will, because that is your destiny." Very beautiful. Allow me to enter into your life, or I will break open and enter into your life. You choose what you want to. I had allowed Swami to enter into my life. Ever since I was born, my parents were devotees and they had told me only one thing: this is God. And so I had simply believed, I had simply had faith, yeah, this has to be God, because my parents say that He is God. But that day I realized that this God is not just a God, but He is also my hero. He is also my best friend. That is how he entered into my life. And ever since, it's been an amazing love story.